Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata Podcast. This is episode number 57. Before we get into it, this is a podcast where I interview comedians and musicians in the New York, New Jersey, Philly area, and sometimes I do a solo podcast, which I am going to be doing today. So we're going to jump right into it. So my apologies, listeners, for the lack of in-person guests the past few weeks. I have been very busy. Right now, my central focus is saving money to move in a few months, and my people who have been listening to me for a while know that it has been my goal to move for a few years, and it has been difficult for me financially. So right now, I just really haven't had much time to book in-person guests, but I do want to keep this content. I did make a promise to you guys and to myself in the new year that I would keep the content consistent. So we can keep things active here on the Pranzata Podcast. So my apologies for not having the in-person people. We're going to get a few soon. By the way, I wanted to ask you guys, I'm also considering going back to a bi-weekly schedule where I do a podcast one week and music content the next week and rotate it. So I would, for example, I'd be putting out a video every Wednesday, but one week would be a podcast and one week would be some type of thing I play on piano or sing or whatever. I used to put out a lot of music content, but life got very busy, and I felt like consistency was more important than I wanted to make sure I was consistent with everything. So I stopped doing the music content because I was like, you know what, I want to put out a weekly podcast. I feel like it's really important. But now it's at the point where I'm like, I've been practicing a lot of music stuff lately, and I really want to start putting out music content again. So let me know what you guys think about that. Do you guys think it's a good idea if I really only Jazzy just jumped on the computer while I was recording. I wish you could see, but it's audio only today. But let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section. If you guys think that it would be a good idea for me to rotate it, because I only have time to do one or the other, or rotate it. I wouldn't have time to put out 2 videos a week. It would have to either be like just podcast, just music, or rotated bi-weekly. So let me know what you guys think about that. If you think that's a stupid idea that I'll end up losing listeners from the podcast or whatever if I don't put it out weekly, or if you think like content is content regardless. I don't know. I have to think about it. But anyways, so a couple of things I want to talk about today. I do want to talk about the current event right now that is going on, the current incident that happened. I don't know if it happened today or yesterday, but I just heard about it today. The attack on Dave Chappelle that happened on stage. Again, I don't know exactly if it was yesterday or today when it happened. Today is May 4th. May the 4th be with you. I don't even watch Star Wars, but I know Star Wars fans are really big on the May the 4th be with you. But I wanted to give my thoughts on what happened with Dave Chappelle. I'm not somebody who... I typically really try to stay away from controversial events on this podcast. I do sometimes chime in on my feelings towards controversial events. For example, I talked a lot about the pretty recent Joe Rogan controversy with Spotify that happened a few months ago. I talked about the Will Smith and Chris Rock incident. And the reason I talked about those things is because those things directly affected my world that I care about. Those were things that directly affected comedy, and actually the incident with Joe Rogan affected music and comedy. So it affected 2 of my worlds at once because it was related to, musicians and comedy, So if something genuinely hits home and drives an emotional response out of me, I'm going to talk about it. But I typically stay away from political and whatever the latest thing is, because I personally think it's sort of inauthentic to just talk about the current events just because you think it'll get you views. If it's not important to me, I won't talk about it. For example, I really have very little to say on the Johnny Depp incident and the court case, and also the controversy with Elon Musk right now and Twitter. Like, I don't really have very much to say on that. None of those things really affect me. I might say a little bit about it, actually. I have small thoughts on it, but nothing that I'm gonna make a big deal about. But I do want to talk about this incident with Dave Chappelle, because this does affect me emotionally, because I'm a new stand-up comic. I've been out of practice for a few months, but that's because I'm saving to move. Once I move, I'll be back in practice. And in general, I'm a huge lover of comedy. A lot of my best friends are comedians. A lot of people on this podcast that I interview are comedians. That's literally the point, part of the point of my podcast is to interview comedians and musicians. So honestly, the situation, when I saw it on the news, it really angered me. I almost wanted to start crying because it really, I don't know, it just really affected me to see that, because as somebody who really respects the art of comedy, who has done comedy shows, who has been to many open mics, I guess to me it's like I can kind of put myself in those shoes almost. It's like it's kind of, put it this way, it's like if you were a mother with a small child and you heard about something on the news where a small child was attacked or something like that, that would affect you emotionally, because you can almost like emotionally put yourself in that situation. And when I hear about, when I heard about the Chris Rock incident and this incident, in both cases, I could imagine like myself being on stage and getting attacked, and it really scares me, the thought that this could be, because I've heard a lot of speculation that ever since the Chris Rock incident, I've heard a lot of speculation amongst comedians that this is now going to be a trend, basically, that this is going to be a new thing, that it's going to be normal. It's going to be normal for comedians to be getting attacked on stage, which is very sick to me. It's very scary. As of right now, I don't know why Dave Chappelle was attacked. Again, a lot of speculation is that it had something, because of the timing of it, because it was only, a month and a half post the Will Smith, Chris Rock thing. There is a lot of speculation in the news right now that it was inspired by that. Like it's a copycat sort of thing. And there's also a lot of speculation that it had to do with the jokes he made in his last special, the trans jokes he made that offended a lot of people. All I have to say about that is I don't think in any situation it's acceptable to resort to violence against a comedian. And again, and I don't even know if this is true. I don't know if that is true, that he was attacked because of his special. I don't know. It could have just been a totally crazy person with no incentive. I guess we'll hear and learn more about that as the story unfolds. But right now, the assumption or the speculation is that it has something to do with the joke. And it makes sense, because if this happened so recently post the Will Smith and Chris Rock incident, and very clearly that attack was made against Chris Rock because there was a joke that offended Will Smith's family, it kind of does make sense that it's very likely that there's something similar going on and that a trend has been started. Don't know for sure, but all I have to say is that if that is true, if this attack was made against Dave Chappelle regarding to something he said either in his current act that he was doing when he got attacked or in his previous special that, was very controversial, if that was the reason why he got attacked, I think that is absolutely ridiculous. It pains me. It makes me sad. It makes me very angry, because the way I see it is, again, this is an art that I really care for. I really love. I'm very passionate about. I practice it myself. I'm very new, but I have put a lot of thought and practice into it regardless. And I can tell you from the perspective of a comedian, the goal of the comedian is to make people laugh, is to make people happy. But with that being said, in order to do that, you do have to, how do I put this? You have to, there's a line, okay? There's a line, and the comedian's job is to figure out where to be on that line. And because you have to understand that this is an art form where you think of your jokes and you write your jokes by yourself in your bedroom or at the coffee shop or whatever. You don't have an audience with you constantly to practice these jokes. You write your notes, and the only way to find out how your jokes are going to be perceived is when you practice them with a live audience, which is seldom, which doesn't happen during the writing process. So you really don't know how these jokes are going to be perceived until you perform them. So it's pretty common. It's very common for comedians, going back to what I was talking about with that line. There's a line that if you play it too safe and you go too under the line, well, you're a boring comedian. Now you can also push it and go too far over the line and offend a bunch of people. And then sometimes the best comedians find exactly like the center of that line where they're saying stuff that's a little bit outrageous, but also mutually understood amongst the audience that it's a joke. But at the end of the day, the point I'm trying to get at the end of the day, the comedian's job is to find the line that makes people happy and makes people laugh. The comedians are not, their job isn't to offend people. That's not what they want to do. They don't want to offend people. They want to make people happy. That's why they're there. That's why they're doing it. And from personal experience, and like I was saying, you don't always know. You don't really always know where that line is, and you don't always know if you're going to cross it or you're going to play it too safe. And it's really difficult to find that line sometimes. For example, there have been plenty of instances where I have personally accidentally gone too far, and then I had to reassess the situation and decide if that was something I wanted to correct in my act, or, and there's also certain things like I'll give an example. I think I made a joke once about like I was single and dating, and I kind of made a joke about bad sex or whatever. Well, in that instance, the majority of my audience was male, and I didn't get very many laughs from that. And at the end of the show, one of my comedian friends was in the audience. So I went up to them and I asked them, I was like, I didn't really get a lot of laughs from that joke. Do you think maybe it just crossed the line a little bit too much because I was like making bad sex jokes and most of the audience was male, and it kind of offended them? And he was 100% honest with me. He was like, yeah, to be honest, like from the male perspective, he was like, sex is hard. He's like, I'm a guy, and girls don't know what it's like to have to do it. So it is hurtful to hear a woman talking about bad sex or whatever. So I was like, oh shit, I didn't know that. But then he followed to say, but if you had females in the audience, well, that might be a different case. You might connect with the females. So that's the other, and that's the thing. That's the other part of being a comedian. You don't always know, like, you're not going to please the entire crowd. So you might have a bunch of people that connect with your joke, or you might have, in comedy, they call it splitting the room. And actually, there's some speculation that the best comedians are the ones who could split the room. I don't, really know if that's true. It's just kind of theory or speculation, but the point I'm getting at is that's the other part of it too. It's like, even when you do find that fine line that isn't going too far or isn't going to taking it too easy, you can sometimes, it's very difficult. Like, you can sometimes go too far for some people, but go too easy on other people. It's really, it's difficult, and it's controversial to be a comedian. You have to be controversial to be a comedian, because in order to find a joke that's good, it's going to be you're going to say something outrageous. I mean, like, for example, I've heard comedians talk shit about their kids, like about how sometimes annoying their kids could be. Now, does that mean they're a bad parent? No, it just means they're making a joke about it. I've heard comedians talk about their spouses. I've heard comedians say outrageous things about their spouses. And I think at the end of the day, one of the joys of comedy is, to me at least, and one of the reasons I love comedy is because I feel like in life we have to put on a mask. We have to go to work in our suit and tie, and I'm kind of making an analogy here because not everybody goes to work in a suit and tie. But by suit and tie, I mean you have to go out in the world and especially for the working class. I am a working class citizen. You know, I don't have a lot of time off. I have to spend a lot of time working with kids, and I have to go out in the world and be this person that I'm not necessarily, that sometimes I feel like I have to put on this face that isn't necessarily me. And I think it's even worse for people who work in corporations and that sort of thing, because sometimes you can have very strict rules on the job. You can't say certain words, you can't wear certain things, and it gets exhausting. If you're somebody who works a lot of hours during the week, it gets very exhausting to have to put on this mask most of the day. So I think at the end of the day, I think one of the joys of comedy is the fact that you get to take off this mask and you get to hear somebody saying outrageous things that are thoughts that the majority of people can relate to, but they just can't say. You know what I mean? Like, they can't talk about it at work. They can't make fun of their kids in the house. They can't make fun of their spouse to their spouse's face. So it's really refreshing and it's really fun, and it's very cathartic to go into, you know, after work, after hours, like 8 p.m. to have a beer and sit in a dark room and listen to somebody talk about the shit that you're probably thinking all day and you just can't say. And at the end of the day, like I said, they're just trying to make light of situations. In no way is the comedian trying to offend anybody or trying to hurt anybody. But unfortunately, because of the nature of the job, it sometimes happens. And so, you know, from the perspective of somebody who loves comedy and who sees it that way, it is really scary and really heartbreaking to me to see that that it could potentially be a new trend for comedians to be attacked because they cross the line and say things that offend people. I think that is insane. It's outrageous. It scares me. It scares me as a female. I wouldn't have the means to protect myself if something like that happened to me. You know, I don't even know what else to say about that other than it's fucking crazy and fucking outrageous that there's actually people who were supporting Will Smith when he did that. And again, this instance with Dave Chappelle, I don't know. I don't know why it happened. So I can't say for sure that it's a similar thing, that it had to do with something offensive he said. But man, if that's the case, that's really scares the shit out of me, quite honestly. Makes me very sad. Makes me really worried about the safety of a lot of comedians that I look up to. God forbid if somebody takes it to the next level and shoots somebody on stage or something like that. It's just very scary. Anyways, I'm going to move on to the next topic. I just kind of wanted to give my 2 cents about that. I was going to make a quick mention about some of the other things we were talking about before. I remember I was saying, like, there are other controversial things going on and I have a few thoughts about them. But not so much. I think the first thing I was going to talk about was, the Elon Musk thing. I don't really have much to say about the Elon Musk Twitter thing because, for one, it's not something, like I said, that really affects me emotionally in any kind of way, per se. But the one thing I do want to say is just kind of like food for thought. It does trigger a thought that I've often had in the past, and it kind of brings it up, and I would like to talk about it. And would be something interesting to talk about with a guest if they were here. But one thing I've always thought is, why do so many people assume that if you're rich, you're evil? To me, that's crazy, because I'll give you an example. I remember there's this one spiritual teacher that I listened to on YouTube. I really like her. Some of the shit she says is a little bit out there, and I don't necessarily believe everything she says, but at the end of the day, she has truly helped so many people, and she's helped me. Like, a lot of the videos, to me, it's like basically free therapy for me. And again, she's not a licensed therapist, but regardless, I have listened to her inspirational videos online and come back a better person, able to function better in society and be happier. So like it or not, license or not, she has helped me, and she has helped so many people, because I've read the comment sections and so many people have been like, oh my God, the way you explain this has really opened my mind to a lot of things, etc., etc. Okay, so she is a spiritual teacher. She puts out a lot of inspirational videos to help people through dark times they're having, and she kind of gives a spiritual, I guess, explanation for things you might be going through. So for example, like if you're somebody who's experiencing lots of jealousy, she might give her perspective on why, the spiritual cause of jealousy, and it kind of, I don't know, it could free people up and help them think of it in a positive light, sort of thing. But what I'm trying to say is, I remember at some point she was getting criticized for selling merchandise. And people were like, if you're a spiritual teacher, why the fuck are you trying to make money, you know? But how is she, she's putting out all this content and so many people are being helped from it. Did you expect her just to do it for free just because she's a spiritual teacher? I guess that's kind of, it's an example I'm trying to make, like an analogy to the thing with Elon Musk. I feel like he gets a lot of shit just because he's rich. And again, maybe there's a whole lot I don't know about him. Again, it's not something I'm an expert. I don't read a lot about him. But I think in general, like the vibe I get is that people don't like him because he has a lot of money. And I just don't understand why having a lot of money inherently makes you a bad person. If you're trying to do something to help the world, you would need money to pay your workers and to continue doing it. Like, for example, if people are trying to, if the medical field is trying to find a cure for cancer, well, they would need money to pay the people to do the research to find the cure for cancer. Like, I just don't think that everything that makes money is inherently evil. I would like to be rich one day, and I know for a fact that if I become rich one day, I'm going to invest that money into good things. I'm going to help my family. I'm going to I know this is kind of silly, but if I was a rich person who could do whatever I want with my money, I would want to open a few cat shelters, like for homeless cats and stuff, because there's a lot of cats that are suffering because they are homeless, and there's so many cats and not enough people to adopt the cats. So I feel like that's a way I could give back, and I would like to give back to the poor in some way, but I could only do that if I had lots of money. I can't do any of those things because I barely even have money for myself. So I don't know. I don't know much about the Elon Musk like Twitter situation, but it does spark that thought about how I do think it's crazy that all rich people are just assumed to be pieces of shit, and I think that's insane. Now, there are lots of rich people who are pieces of shit, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think that everybody should be labeled a piece of shit just for being rich. I think people should look into it a little more and learn more about the person. And again, maybe I don't know some of the dirty facts on Elon Musk. I personally haven't heard anything bad about him, but maybe I haven't done enough research. Okay. And I was going to say something about the Johnny Depp thing also with the court case. I was going to say that I don't really have much to say on it other than I couldn't even watch it because it's all the talk right now, but I personally can't watch it because I have been in an abusive relationship myself when I was in my 20s, and quite honestly, it was too triggering for me to even watch. It sort of brought back flashbacks of when I was in a situation like that, and it did upset me to watch, and I don't even want to say anything on it because it's like being in that situation myself and having been in a similar situation myself where I was in a very abusive, domestically abusive relationship. I sort of I don't know. It's just, it's not even something I want to get into. That's really all I wanted to say about that. Was like, I don't care to talk about to continue watching or talk about the Johnny Depp situation, because for me personally, it just reminds me of when I was in an abusive relationship, and it's like I don't even want to think about it. But I do feel very sad for honestly both of them. Like I know there's a lot of shit about Amber Heard right now. But I also know from being in an abusive relationship, I also know that the person doing most of the abuse is also a deeply troubled soul who also needs help. So I honestly, all I have to say about that is I wish the best for both of them, and I hope they're able to end that situation soon and both move on and heal. But besides that, it's not really something I want to talk about or continue watching very much. Okay, I want to keep this podcast pretty short today, so I don't have anything else to talk about personally in my personal life or anything like that, but I did take a few questions and answers. So let me look at these questions. One second. I only have 2 actually. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay, first question. What is the most surprising physical achievement? For example, 50 pull-ups, a dunk, etc. So this is a question by Asiatic, one of my Instagram followers. And again, he said, what is your most surprising physical achievement? I would say the biggest cock I've ever deep-throated was... No, I'm just kidding. Honestly, it's weird because I'm a physically active person, but I don't think I've ever really done anything that... Like I work out every day and I've lifted heavy weights at one point, but I can't really say I've ever done anything that would be considered an outstanding physical achievement. I've done a few 5Ks, but I could barely run the whole time. I walked like half the time, so I wouldn't consider that anything to brag about. What else have I done? I get, and again, this isn't like something, I didn't do anything particularly wild. Like I didn't lift like 300 pounds while doing it. Nothing like that. Like nothing that deserves a medal of honor. But last year I did a 30-day fitness challenge. And again, the actual daily fitness routines were fairly easy. They were things that anybody could do. But I guess the fact that I did them 30 days in a row might be considered a physical achievement. But no, I've never pull-ups. No, I can't even do a single pull-up, quite honestly. I don't really have a very strong upper body. My lower body is very strong, but my upper body isn't. Yeah, no, I've never done like a Tough Mudder, nothing. I really, in general, I'm a fit person. I stay very active, but I wouldn't necessarily say I do anything above the norm. I just kind of have like a very average fitness routine. I'm just very consistent. So I think really the most notable thing about my physical routine is the consistency of it. I've through thick and thin, in the worst troubling times, I have always been consistent with my workouts. And I think that's the most notable achievement I could say, but I can't honestly say I've done anything wild. I think I used to lift very heavy. So I think at one point I was squatting, close to 200 pounds. I mean, I guess that's pretty significant, but again, it's not like world record significant. So I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that question other than just the steadiness and the consistency of my physical workouts. Okay, next question. And last question, because I only had 2 questions. So this person is also an Instagram follower, mutual follower, because I follow him back, and he prefers to remain anonymous. And his question is, how do you deal with the sadness of having to cut off a toxic relationship, whether it's romantic or platonic? I've definitely been in, again, I literally said earlier in the podcast that I had a ex-boyfriend who was a very toxic relationship. So I've been in that situation, and I've also had relatives, family members that I've had to cut off because there was a toxic relationship there as well. And also, let me clarify that sometimes toxic could mean your chemistry. It doesn't always mean, having a toxic relationship doesn't always mean that one person is good and one person is bad. Sometimes 2 people just get together and there's just something almost it almost seems spiritual. There's like something going on there that for whatever reason you bring out the worst in each other. And sometimes it's really nobody's fault, but sometimes that could be the nature of a toxic relationship as well. It's not always one good and one bad. It could just be in general, like you bring out your worst traits with each other. Sometimes it happens. But in particular, there were two, I want to say there were two, really one actually. There was one particular family member that was really hard for me. There was a lot of sadness afterwards when we ended our relationship with each other, with a family member. Again, you said to also include talk about non-platonic. So for me, I'm going to kind of reference this one situation to give my advice. For me, when we ended our relationship, there wasn't any sadness as far as missing them because it was a toxic relationship. So my life had gotten so much better when they were not in it anymore. But I think where the sadness was feeling duped, like feeling like the person who I thought they weren't the person that I thought they were. And that's really where the sadness was. The sadness was I thought this person cared about me and I don't think they actually do. And I think that's where the real sadness was. It was dealing and coping with the fact that what I thought was true wasn't true. And how did I deal with that? I think dealing with this, I mean, I'm going to be 100% honest. Like, it kind of just took time. It took time to heal. Like that sadness did stay with me for, I want to say, close to 2 to 3 years. And then it finally went away. Like, I remember there was a certain point where I couldn't even hear their name without feeling upset. And now I don't feel that way anymore. Now I kind of feel like I'm just kind of removed from the situation. So honestly, it just took a lot of time. And I also think what helped with that is just keeping busy and doing the things that you want to do with your life so that your life feels rich and fulfilled, so that you kind of stop thinking about it. And now again, it's hard to, especially it really depends on the nature of the toxic relationship. Like, if it was somebody that, it could have been a situation where you truly did love the person and they really truly did love you. You just kind of brought out the worst in each other and it was like a mutually toxic thing. I think that's a little different. And that could even be harder to deal with because it's kind of like, oh man, it could have worked. The relationship could have worked if we just did XYZ, and there could be some self-blame. But I feel like in a situation where it was like truly, no, this person was not treating you well. This person was nasty, or this person was putting you down. I think if it's a situation like that, I honestly think that for me personally, like I said, the hardest part was just accepting that they weren't the person I thought they were. And really it wasn't them that I missed. It was the idea of who I thought they were that I missed. I really wish that they were just this person that I really thought they were, sort of thing. And then again, it is something that sometimes really sad situations just truly take time to heal. And sometimes time is the best thing. And all you could really do in the meantime is do your best to take care of yourself and keep busy. And continue to build relationships with people that are not toxic. You know? I would say be proud of yourself that you were able to end the relationship, and consider that a sign that you really love yourself and you're taking care of yourself. You know? Anyways, I feel like that's actually all I have to talk about today. I feel like that was a sad note to leave the podcast on, but I have a very busy day, so I have to get going. Again, this is Pranzata Podcast, episode number, what did I say? 57? Episode number 57. I'm sorry again for the lack of in-person guests. I will hopefully have one for you guys in 2 weeks, if not this week. But again, let me know how you guys think. Like, would you guys be cool if I started doing a bi-weekly schedule where 1 week of podcast and one week music content? Let me know what you think about that, or if you look forward to the podcast every week and you want it to continue. I'm not sure. That's it. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit subscribe, like, leave a comment, and have a good day. Bye.